All right, guys, let's get rolling here. It's 4 past the hour. We got a couple more people logging in. Happy Thursday, everybody from not so sunny San Diego, as I'm looking out the window right now. It's San Diego. I got off the plane yesterday and I was freezing my butt off because it was 70 degrees and I left my house. It was almost 90. So anyway, so today we are talking about cold calling and door knocking. And so a couple things that and there's different ways of doing this, right? And we'll get into that. I know I never personally cold called, but I cold knocked and mostly FISBOs. And so I'll talk about that when I get to speak. But let's go ahead and Matt, let's get you rolling with this and go from there.
Okay, so when I first got in the business, I was told to call FISBOs and expireds and bang on doors. So that's exactly what I did. I think my first year in real estate, I sold 40 homes. They were all from calling expireds for sale by owners and knocking on doors. And so I would get up every morning and go from like 8 to 11 and just call expired listings for sale by owners. And I think at that time, when I first started, I think I was using like Mike Ferry scripts, but it does work if you're willing to do it. And I actually, when I was a brand new agent, I know Dennis doesn't look like Dennis is on the call this morning, but it's an interesting story. I first started with Remax and the broker told me to go to an award ceremony to meet all the agents because I was brand new. And Pete Middleton was in that office and Dennis D'Souza was in the office and I'd never met them, but I asked everybody there if they had any advice for me. And Dennis gave me some great advice. He said, because I said, what advice would you give to me? Let me tell you what you do. Go find a neighborhood of like new construction where people have only, maybe lived there 6 months, a year. And he said, nobody's going to be working in that neighborhood because everyone assumes that, but some of them are going to be moving because they might be getting divorced, they might get a job change, etc. So I did what he said. And I would go out from like 5 to 8 o'clock and knock on doors. And I found people, so that's good advice. But I'll tell you, when I stopped working on, being a boat captain and got into sales, and my goal was to make enough money so I could buy my own boat and sail around the world. But my first sales job was for a door-to-door sales company in the DC area. And we would go out 5 to 8:30 Monday through Friday. And then we would work 2 shifts a day on Saturday and Sunday. We'd do noon to 4 and then take a break and then do 5 to 8:30. So we did 9 shifts a week. And we were selling those discount coupons for like, for $40, they give you oil changes and all kinds of stuff like that to service centers. And I'd never been in sales before, but the big thing in that company was if you could sell, I think it was if you could sell 52 cards a week, you could make $1,000, which was a lot of money back then. This is 40 years ago. Anyway, my first week I sold 102. And the point of the story is knocking on doors does work if you're willing to do it. Calling expireds and for sale by owners does work if you're willing to do it. You just have to be willing to have kind of a thick skin. Knocking on doors, not so much, because people are very friendly when you knock on their door. When you're calling for sale by owners and expireds, you have to have a little bit of a thick skin, but it does work. Like I say, my first year in real estate, which was 1999, I sold 40 homes and every single one of them came from either it all came from cold calling, expireds or for sale by owners. And then once I started to get listings, I would always go and knock on doors around my listings. So, what I always say is everything works and nothing doesn't. So anything that you do, any sort of cold calling, if you do it, will work. And now, of course, you know, there's services like RedX, and I forget all the other ones that will give you the expired listings and for sale by owners every morning, with their phone numbers, their email addresses, and so forth. So, I mean, cold calling really does work. I don't do much of it anymore, but it definitely does work if you're willing to do it. Whether
Hey,
it's
Matt, real
individual
question
call.
for you, for people,
Yeah.
because, and I know those Mike Ferry, scripts are now pretty much free online, right? I've seen them
Mhm.
before. And Mike Ferry is the master, and the numbers are pretty simple. If you call 100 people, you'll get a hold of 35, you'll set 2 appointments. That's, cold call numbers. What, did you follow his scripts pretty exact, or did you?
Yeah, I initially followed the scripts, but my goal was always to try to get into a conversation with people. And so whether it's an expire, especially with expireds or canceled listings, they're people that have, you know, tried to sell their home for 3 months or 6 months or whatever. And I mean, I used to get all my, like I say, most of the listing appointments I went on were expired listings. And I'll never forget, I went on one appointment and I would always really empathize with the people, because I know, you know, you're all excited when you put your house on the market and you think most people think their house is going to fly off the shelf because they have such a beautiful home. And so it's really a deflating feeling to have your house on the market and nobody wants to buy it. And so I went to this appointment once and I'd always say, gosh, I know it's really hard having your house on the market, especially for 6 months or whatever, and it doesn't sell. She said, you know, it's like every day you're preparing for a party and the guests never arrive. And I always remembered that. And so I would always really, especially with expired listings and for sale by owners, really try to empathize with them and say, gosh, I know it's hard to have your house on the market and have it not sell, but it's not your fault. And I know you've been getting a lot, I'm sure you've been getting a lot of phone calls this morning. And they would always, oh God, it's unbelievable. I've had like 30 phone calls this morning. But if you can get into a conversation with people and really empathize with them and focus on how you can help them, you really can get through to people. It's a numbers game like anything else. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. But it does work. You know, we had a long time for the market here in San Diego where we really didn't have any expired listings because everything was selling. Well, that's changed now. And so we do have expired listings, and there are different creative ways to go after expireds, but the number one easiest way is to call them. A lot of the times I saw Cameron put RedX in the chat box there. Pretty sure RedX will get you email addresses as well. You can find most people once you know their name on social media. So you can reach out to them on Facebook or Instagram. But it's just, you know, like I say, everything works. And for anybody on this call, if your business is slow, and if it is slow, it typically means you have a lot of time on your hands. There's, you know, nothing better than just reaching out to the people. The beauty with expireds and for sale by owners is, you know, they want to sell their house, or at least they did want to sell their house. And the problem is 9 times out of 10 it's not the house, it's the agent, because the agent let them overprice their house, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, good, excellent. Yeah, and that's really 99% of the reason why a house doesn't sell, it expires, is because they priced it incorrectly, right?
yeah.
100%.
Yeah, that's right.
Let's go to Mr. Lawson there on the way to the airport, because he's flying the friendly skies today. What's up, Dave?
Yeah, I'm coming to see you, Mitch, and you,
Get on here.
Cameron, and you, Matt, I'm flying to San Diego. So
Oh.
anyway, I agree with everything that Matt said, and I built my entire business by talking to people on the phone. I did door knock, but I can tell you, I wanted to talk to a lot of people because I knew my numbers. Real estate is a contact sport, and it's no different than any other contact sport. The more contacts you make, the more sales. So I'm gonna give you an example. I tracked my numbers for many, many years. I talked to 108 people, and one of them says yes, and then I get a $40,000 commission. So a lot of it starts out with the mindset when you're talking to people. Do you have the mindset that you failed 107 times? Or do you have the mindset that the 108th person said yes, and you get a big fat commission? So one of the tricks I did is I broke it down. So I'm just going to round the numbers, so it's, 40, let's just say it's $10,000 commission, right? And let's just say you talk to 100 people. Every time you pick up the phone and somebody answers and says hello, and you have a conversation, even if they hang up on you or they don't want to talk to you or they're not interested, that's like making $100 for a phone call, right? Now, in my case, it's more like $400, right? So it starts with mindset. There was no Zillow or Realtor.com. There was no lead sources. I used Mike Ferry scripts in the beginning, and then I've looked at Tom Ferry's. I've looked at all of them, and I basically have written a lot of my own scripts. So the other thing that you have to understand before you actually do anything is, what do you do to be ready? Do you want to, right now, about 1 out of 10 to 1 out of 12 of those people, right? Do circle down, I know that it's about 1 out of 80, right? So if you know your numbers, but the thing is to know what to say. And what the problem is most people, they just pick up the phone and they start babbling, and they don't know, they don't spend the time to be a professional real estate agent so that they actually know what to say and how to get around all of the objections. And so I tell all of my agents on my team, you've got to, you have to figure out, what are you doing, right? And so you want to have your conversation practice strategies. So what are you going to do? And you need to know, what is your opener? What are your, when they stall, what are you going to do? How are you going to dig for motivation, right? If somebody's interested, how are you going to, pre-qualify them, right? How do you have, what's your plan to have conversion practice strategies, right? And so what I wrote down to get ready is that you have to consistently practice, right? Matt did this for a long time, right? And what did he do? He just called and he practiced and role played, and he knew the scripts, right, Matt? And the thing is, I had a meeting with my team yesterday, and the newer agents, if they have it, if they're making phone calls and they're not very good, they got to talk to 80 people. If you practice a little, you talk to 60. If you practice a lot, you're at 40. I have 2 agents that are converting, and they talk to about 30 people. And I'm right now, because I'm basically making the calls to the very best people I know, I'm around 20. So do you want to practice and be at 20 or 30 or 40 calls to make a deal, or 80? If you spend time to get good at your craft, you're in the sales business, it will make a huge difference. So cold calling, and I really think I like to consider it more like warm calling. So first of all, if you're calling a FSBO or an expired, it is not a cold call. It's a warm call. We already know that they want to sell, right? They've already raised their hand. Even if you want to call and do circle dialing around the new listing you have, right? And then you say, hi Matt, David Lawson here with the Lawson team at EXP. This was calling all the neighbors in our neighborhood to let them know that we just listed 123 Main Street. It's a 5-bedroom, 4-bath house, totally remodeled, 2.7 million. And it's going to go on the market on tomorrow, right? By the way, that's exactly what we're doing, right? We have that property going on the market tomorrow, right? And you say, I'm just I wanted to do two things, Matt. One, I wanted to invite you that we're gonna have a private open house for all the neighbors from 12 to 1, and then all the rest of the people get to come from 1 to 4 on Saturday. And then would you be interested? And then they'll say all kinds of other stuff, but it doesn't matter what they say, because whatever they say, you have to know how to question sell. So Matt, what might you say if I said that? Just give an example.
If you said what, David, go ahead.
If I said to you, that script, and, would you like to come by and check out the house, because I'm calling in the neighborhood around the new listing I have, right? So you might say, well, I'm not available Saturday. Oh, you're not available Saturday? Well, would it make sense for me to set up a time for a private meeting? No, I'm not really interested. And then they say, you know what they usually say? Well, how much is the house? How big is it? And if you use the neighbors or the owners, oh, this is Don and Mark Porter's house. Do you know the Porters? Oh yeah, we know them, right? So now they know that we're the neighborhood expert, right? And then they'll say, and why is that a warm call? It's a warm call because how many people want to know what their neighbors are selling a new house for? It's
Everybody.
virtually everybody, right? So those are some of the keys to making these calls, because when you use the word cold calling, it's like, oh no, I don't want to be one of those people. But when you call people that actually are interested in real estate, and that's specifically FSBO's expired, circle dialing, and then there's a number of other ones through lead sources, but that's not what we're going to talk about today. You can usually have very good conversations. So anyway, those are kind of my thoughts, unless anybody had a question. Oh, one other thing I have to say. When you're making these calls, you have to not only track your numbers, but you have to track your improvements. I always say it's not about perfection, it's about progress, right? And if you practice every day for 15 minutes, that's 5 hours a week. I'm sorry, 5 hours a month of practice. And I tell my agents yesterday, I said, don't practice on real people, because when you're going to have a real conversation, if you practice on them, you're going to talk to 80 people. If you practice and get good at your craft, you can talk to half that many people, and your success will double. Right? So track your improvements. And then the other thing is track how many people you call every day. And the reason why is if you set a goal to talk to 20 people a day, and at the end of the day you do, and sometimes you'll talk to 20 people and no one will have any interest whatsoever. But at the end of the day, you go, you know what? I did my job. And you go home feeling like you're accomplished because you set out to do a goal, and if you do it, and the other thing is you track the goal, you track what you do, you track your improvements of how many calls you have before you set an appointment, and then you do it for 2 more weeks, and then you're going to make less calls and get an appointment, and you track it for 2 more weeks, and you do the same thing. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
That was great, David.
I want to touch on that real quick, Dave, because the tracking is really important, because you have a measurement. When you don't have a measurement of what you're doing and how you're doing it, you really, it's hard for you to excel. And I developed lots of programs, my open house programs, my internet lead programs, and all that stuff, and it was all based on understanding the numbers. And if you don't understand the numbers, you just can't grow a business. And again, that's the difference between being a proactive realtor and a reactive realtor, right? It's about understanding your numbers and building a business around it, not building a, hey, let's see what happens type of thing. Let's go up to Mr. Cameron Smith up there, because I see that he probably calls 627,242 people a day, right?
That's funny. So good morning. So actually, I'm actually not going to talk about the cold calling because I think we're going to have more folks on the call talking about that. I really want to jump into door knocking. So one of the things that we do for all of our open house system or through the open house system is door knocking, and it works really well because other people just aren't willing to do it. We do it with a door hanger. Looks like this, guys, if you can see it. Open house, neighborhood only. Again, make it special for them. So a couple things though before we get into it is, like you guys were saying, tracking your numbers. You got to track your numbers with door knocking too. If you're using Chime CRM, which we do have now at EXP, I think it's $40 a month. But if you are using Chime or whatever CRM you have, see if it has a door knocking tool. For example, Chime, if you can see the screen here, has a door knocking tool where you can track every door that you knock on, every time someone opens, leave a note for them. Anything that you're doing on your daily door knocking or during your door knocking, you can track in your CRM, which just makes it so much easier. Because as you guys know, I'm sure if you've done door knocking in the past, you got your flyers or you got your door hangers, you got stuff you're carrying with you. It's kind of hard to make notes. Well, now you can do it really quickly and efficiently through the app. So if you are going to be doing, door knocking, track your numbers. Really though, it's preparation again, just about all we do here. It's all about preparation. You have to know the neighborhoods when you're going into them. Have a reason to go into these neighborhoods. Don't just go into them and start knocking on doors because you won't have anything to say. You're just going to sound like a door-to-door salesman. No, we just sold a home, or our office just sold a home. We just listed a home. We're doing an open house down the street. You have to have a reason, to want to reach out to these people and want to knock on their doors and to create that conversation, to get them in the conversation. Like Matt, like you were saying, you have to be empathetic and obviously get them in the conversation. And you're 100 miles ahead of where you could have been if you're just trying to knock on doors. One of the first things I always do when you knock on the door, I always ring the doorbell rather than knock on the doors. And you're right, Hemla, was it some people are a little bit squeamish and that's part of it. So what I always do is ring the doorbell. A lot of people now have rings so they can see who you are. They can see that you're, professionally dressed. They can see that you have something for them. And rather than knocking on the door, if I actually physically knock on the door, a lot of the times the dogs are going to start barking. It just kind of creates chaos versus, if you ring the doorbell, sometimes it goes directly to their cell phone. They can see whatever, and they can actually communicate you now through the ring chime or, through the doorbell itself. And then obviously once they see who you are, I would say 80% of the people that I actually get a hold of do come to the door. So they're not having, I just don't think there's enough people door knocking that people are concerned about it or worried about it, at least in our area here in Southwest Florida. Obviously we're in a great area and people are happy and excited and love living down here. So they're friendly pretty much, or we've experienced that they're very friendly when they come to the door. Always compliment them on their house. If you're walking up to someone's house and they open the door, hey, I love your pavers. I love your car. I love something. You got to get them on your side. You have to be part of you have to like what they like. I always lead it off with, hey, I love what you guys did. Did you guys just paint? I mean, looks great. And then I always introduce myself really quickly before I really let them talk. It's Cameron Smith. The reason I was stopping by is we're doing a neighbors only open house right down the street. So I wanted to invite all the neighbors. And then before I let them say anything or slam the door in my face, I always quickly ask, so I just wanted to know, do you know anyone that's looking to move into your neighborhood? And then I, quiet up real quick. So that's really the first time I let them talk is, hey, love your house. It looks so nice. Looks great. My name's Cameron Smith. We're doing a neighbors only open house down the street. And I just wanted to see if you know anyone that's looking to move into your neighborhood. And then you let them talk. And that really has worked well for all of our team down here to kind of get that conversation started. Once they say no, yes, or maybe, of course, rinse and repeat. You have to acknowledge what they said. And then the second question I always ask very quickly before they have the chance to close the door is, well, just curious, how long have you lived here? And that'll give you another very long intro. Very few people are going to say, I don't want to tell you that. It doesn't really matter. That doesn't harm them. So then by those two questions, you really have an advantage where you are complimenting them. You're on their side. They understand why you're there. You're supposed to be there because you're either just listed a home, you just sold a home, you're doing an open house, whatever it may be. And now you're just asking friendly questions. I have not had bad experiences with this, you guys. You have to try it, see for yourself, lead with a super positive attitude. Remember, every single door and every single person's new. So you always have to have that high energy, high excitement, or at least being friendly to them. And then throughout that conversation, once you get it going, you're looking for, how you can help them. You need to look for their motivation. Are they, are the grandkids getting bigger and they're thinking about it? Or maybe the grandkids are thinking about moving down here, whatever it may be. Try to figure out their situation. And then remember, you're always just trying to get them to come over to your neighborhood open house or whatever you may be doing. If you have a new listing or that kind of thing. Every single time you talk with someone, you guys, every time someone opens the door, even if you don't talk with them, they slam it in your face, you have to track it. Because just like Dave was saying earlier, we know for a fact that for every 100 homes that we go through, we're going to get someone that actually reaches back out to us and is wants more information about real estate later on. So it just makes it so that you can mentally go into it. It's 95 degrees down here in South Florida right now. And myself and my team for all of our new listings have been walking around these neighborhoods sweating because it's so worth it, because nobody else is doing it. It gives us a huge advantage. Now, it's not fun, but again, for example, this home here, we just sold Bon Air. This one right here came from door knocking this home that we just sold. So we sold it. First thing we did is walked around the neighborhood and said, hey, we just sold this. We had a whole bunch of buyers that are still looking. If you know anyone, let us know. And then 3 days later, the owner of this property right here called me, did the same thing, and then so forth and so forth. It does work. Like Matt says, it all works. You just have to choose which ones you want to do. And I truly believe that door knocking right now works exceptionally well, and it's extremely low cost. We are paying a local company $1 a door hanger right now for these. They're two-sided. There seemed to be a good price, so $1 a door hanger. So look for local printing companies, and then just really track your numbers. I mean, track your numbers. And I guarantee if you do 1,000 contacts, you will at least have some business, and you will be, way further ahead than you were right now. If you're not trying to spend money on advertising, it's not expensive advertising. So that's kind of what I got to say about door hangers and door knocking.
Great. And I'm going to throw something in on this. When you're picking a neighborhood to door knock, even market to, it doesn't really matter. You have to understand the turnover rate in there also. So, I'm a big believer in not chasing business. So for instance, if you go to a neighborhood with 500 homes and they have a 1% turnover rate, right? That nobody's selling their home in that neighborhood. Our numbers were always, we wanted, I guess you could do price point, never less than 5%. We liked 8% or higher for a turnover rate. And when we did those neighborhoods, we did well. Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, no, that's extremely important. I think I kind of glossed over that. Part of knowing the neighborhood is finding a neighborhood that you actually want to do this in. You guys find something that has a turnover rate, that has enough people that are looking like they could prospectively be selling or moving. And then obviously knowing what's selling, knowing the average prices, knowing those numbers. That way, when you get into conversations with people at the door, you're knowledgeable, you're the expert, you're the person that they can lean on and learn from. I use NAR RPR. I know a lot of you guys know of it and use it. It also allows you that you can create a semi-custom market report. So if you don't want to do a door hanger, you can actually do a semi-custom like one-page market reports that you can print out, and those are what you can hand out, and they'll have the name of the people that you're knocking on the doors on. Now you have to keep that organized. So that's something I don't do. That's why we use generic door hangers. But it's just another option that you can do. NAR RPR is great.
Oh, awesome. All right, great stuff, Kim. Brian, tell us what you do.
Man, everything I've heard so far is something I've either gone through or tried and would recommend also. Cam, a lot of things you said right there were, and what Matt said, I started the same way. There was, I think the first piece of equipment we had in our real estate office was a fax machine, and we had just books. Everything was books, and so you learn. You either have to call or knock on doors, and that's how we all started. So fast forward to today, knowing how much technology there is, and what you guys were saying is I say that the preparation is the key. I heard it time and time again on here. And I would say that right now, if you're a newer agent or if you're just learning, when you hear somebody say you need to track your numbers, tracking your numbers will tell you which bucket you're very good at. Tracking your numbers will also tell you where you suck, okay? And it's where we suck is where we need the most. So think about this. If you're really good at getting your opportunity bucket, that's why you're cold calling. That's why you're door knocking, and maybe you throw in open houses, because we're hearing part of the reason you door knock is an open house. So you have an opportunity bucket. That's one where you really have no idea who you're talking to, who they are. You're just preparing. So the old Mike Ferry scripts were very simple. And I didn't really enjoy them because it was so repetitive. It took all the fun out of it. And I like people, and I like door knocking. I like talking to people. So what I did was I created my own scripts in such a way that I had to predict what the person was going to say. So 90% of these people weren't expecting you to ring their bell, like Cameron was saying, or door knock, or call them. So if you know that ahead of time, you have to be very skilled at how you get over that objection, because now's not a good time. I realize that, right? I have to have a script for that. Hey, I'm sorry, I was doing something, I'm cooking, the kids are screaming, whatever. All of those things are interruptions to the person, and how you handle them have to be very delicate if you want to be able to follow up again later. So get really skilled at door knocking in such a way you know whose door you're going to knock on. RPR is awesome. What I used to do is I would search a neighborhood, I would pick 200 homes, and I would make sure there was a 10% turnover in the last year, meaning there was at least 5 or 6 homes that had sold, 7 or 8 homes that had sold, some didn't sell, some expired. I looked at who bought and moved in. I would just know the numbers. What were they? If it was a 10% turnover, sometimes that was a really good dominated market by one agent. I wanted to know who that agent was. And I would just go through these things. And again, the goal was for me was to fill my opportunity bucket with follow-ups, because it was in the follow-up call or follow-up door knock that's when the magic begins to happen, because now you have the ability to create a lead, and a lead is only somebody that will follow up with you. So if you can get 100 door knocks and you get 5 leads, those leads now go in a separate bucket. Pretty soon you have a lead bucket that's about 100 people or more. That's where I spent the most of my time now, cold calling and those people and trying to move them to an appointment bucket. I got really good at knowing that for every so many opportunities, I'd have leads. For every lead, I'd have an appointment. For every appointment, I'd have a transaction. And the goal was to always be focused on those buckets. It wasn't about who was in those buckets. It was just about managing those buckets, because a professional call on a follow-up from a door knock or from a phone call led to a buyer consultation or listing appointment at some point. But the incubation period, you guys, was somewhere between 6 months and a year. So you've got to have these buckets, and you've got to be prepared to move through them. So if you don't have a lot of leads, you got to go back out and door knock and cold call. If you have a lot of leads, but you don't have a lot of appointments, then you got to work your leads. And these became a business model that was very predictable, because your numbers don't lie. So what I'm hearing here, and everybody is saying, is have really good, knowledgeable opportunity scripts that allow you to do follow-up. If you could just get good at just getting out of the person's face at the front door to just be able to follow up. With me, it was very simple. I always asked this question. I never asked them for what I wanted. I wanted to ask them what they would give me. What was the easiest way for me to follow up with you and get quiet? Because back then it was either a text, and it wasn't even really a text. It was more of a little pager on their side, or, mail it or something. But today we have so many ways to follow up with people. Just ask them what they use. Get really good at their outcome. If you can focus on their outcome, they're going to let you into their world. And that's the beauty of door knocking and cold calling and doing the things that we're talking about here, is just to move an opportunity into a bucket that you can now manage and do business with. And it doesn't matter how long it takes, because we're all in this for the long haul. That's it.
I keep forgetting to unmute myself because I talk to myself all the time. It's pretty standard life for me. Great stuff, Brian. And you're hearing a reoccurring theme here, right? And you're hearing practice. You're hearing, I've never been a script guy personally. I'm like you, Brian. I'm like Mike Ferry scripts. I know they're great for a lot of people because they give you a starting point. And to me, to be really good at any type of scripting is to internalize and make your own. If you ever watch American Idol, the ones that do really, really well, the ones that make the songs their very own, right? It's the same thing. Not that I watch American Idol every day anymore, but I did for a long time.
I have an acronym for the word script. So exactly what you just said. I wrote this 20 years ago. I trademarked it, you guys, so you can't have it, but I'm going to give it to you. What I learned is if I'm successfully communicating reliable information people trust, that's the word script, SCRIPT, successfully communicating reliable information people trust. That's like, you could Google what I'm saying, and what you heard me say was, it was building trust. The moment you begin to have scripts that align with what you're saying, people will begin to trust you. Doesn't matter about rapport. It's about trust.
100%. Mr. Lurch, you know, I know you know everything, so let's shed some of that light on these amazing people here.
Oh, please. First of all, I don't do much door knocking in Philly because you don't know if you're gonna get shot or not. So, you know, it's one of those things. Nah, but in my marketplace where I mainly work in a lot of luxury homes in the neighborhoods, they're an acre or acre and a half apart. So you're not walking a lot of houses. I do know a lot of people in my organization are downtown in the South Philly area and all that stuff. And they do a lot of door knocking, get ready for open houses, because Mitch, you've shared that information and all that stuff before. If you all go to, and again, we have the Tribe University, we have all the scripts of Mike Ferry in there. Scripts are used as a starting point. Life is a script. Swinging a golf club's a script. Driving a car is a script. But you learn to do it your own way. Don't use verbatim like you're reading it. Become you. Make it natural. Sorry. One of the things that I was taught when I first got into the business is every objection you get, write 5 responses to them and learn how to respond to them in the DISC personality traits and responses. There's only so many objections people are going to have. Remember, you're rinse and wash, rinse and wash, rinse and wash. If you do this long enough, you're ultimately going to realize it's the same question. But actually, we go to fault in that because we jump ahead because we think we want to lead them where they want to go, and we're missing a space in between. As we've also always talked about, is, you know, there's pain in our growth. If we try to solve the problem for every agent before they get to that point, you're not going to learn the process. You got to fall. You got to, as a kid. So as you're practicing your scripts, we've talked about this before. This is a great book to get. Go for No. Go for No. You can get it out on Amazon. Yes is the destination. No is how you get there. I mean, I know I had to ask a lot of girls out before I found my wonderful wife that I married and stuff like that. I look at it as all I'm doing is meeting people and having fun. The other thing is don't ask, do you want to buy or sell? You've heard this from everybody. We've used these dialogues. One of the things that I work with in our organization and everything that I work on is, who do you know who's having a baby? Who do you know who just got a promotion? Who do you know has kids that want to go to a different school district because of sports, one way or the other? Who do you know who just lost a family member? Who do you know who's getting a divorce? Who do you know who's got a big ego and wants that big house because they got that big bonus? You ask questions like that, it becomes more of a funnel that people go through in their head versus, do you want to buy and sell? It's like when you buy a white car, you see more white cars. But if you have a black car, you're not seeing white cars. You're only seeing black cars. So it's what your mind brings up. So bring up funnels that people live in, and you will ultimately get more results, because those are changing points. Those are disruptions in people's lives that make them want to go. So when I'm doing my prospecting and I call people, I talk to everybody, no matter, and you're saying it's a script, and I go door knocking. I'm not. Every person I talk to, I say, hey, by the way, exciting times. Who do you know just had a success? They're like, what do you mean? Who's having a baby? Who's having this? Then I go into the real estate, because I'm trying to bring something up to the forefront of their mind. So every person I talk to, I live in abundance that there's a possibility there in the script. And I don't mind no. I like some will, some won't. So what? Next. Move on. Next. But you got to do the work for the success. All right. You got to make the phone calls. Set a goal. Alan Dom taught me you need to make 100 outgoing calls a day. 100. Do a little check marks. 1 little, 2 little, 3 little Indians. Make a game out of it. Have fun. Sit next to somebody else. I know you're not used to hearing me do a 1 little, 2 little, 3 little Indian, Mitch, are you? So get somebody else. You got enough people in this group. Get a partner and say that we're going to cold call or we're going to do whatever 3 times a week. We're going to do it on a Zoom muted. So you're watching the other person do the action. You're giving high fives on the celebrations. You have enough accountability partners here. Stop making the excuses. Make the calls, because if you're not doing the work, you're not going to get the results. End of story. That's where I go. So, and be yourself. Don't try to do any of these scripts. Take what you hear and tweak it to yourself and practice them. Practice, practice, practice.
Yeah, practice, practice, practice. I'm going to throw something up before we go to Randy. And it's, one of the things that I've observed, and some of you guys, who've been to my stuff might have heard me say this before, but I think one of the biggest reasons why realtors don't get out of their comfort zone is the cost to get involved with real estate is so cheap. So what does it cost to be a realtor? It costs $1,500, right? $500. Although I talked to someone the other day that said, well, I got my course for $49 on Groupon. But so, and then $1,000 to join the board, right? So for $1,500, you are now a realtor. And what, if you think about that, everybody on this call here, we go away for a weekend, we're going to spend $2,000-3,000. We go out for a nice dinner with a couple of 4 people, you're going to spend $500 or $600. So $1,500 is not enough to move the needle in your motivational factor. But I want you to think of the mindset of $250,000. The day I started in real estate, the first day, I said, all right, let's build my foundation, which is how do I generate business, right? But I had the mindset, I'm starting a company, and I invested $250,000 to start this company. And I can individually go to every single person on this call, and I guarantee this, and say, if you did $250,000 investment to start your real estate career, what would you do differently? And there's only one answer: everything. You do everything different, because you don't care if you lose $1,500. Nobody cares about $1,500, right? It's not a lot of money in the whole, especially now with inflation, it's like $1. And so you have to have the mindset that you're spending, $250,000 to start this business, and I'm going to do whatever it takes, because that gets you out of your comfort zone. And until you get out of your comfort zone, you'll never grow. And you have to do that. Randy, you're up.
Yeah. So I like what I'm hearing. I personally was never a fan of cold calling, like just randomly calling people out of the blue and hoping that they will, agree to sell their property to me with that type of a script. So I like to do it a different way. And I'm actually in the process now identifying a person on my team that can help me with some of this, because I know, including myself, most agents are not maximizing what they have in front of them. And what I mean by that is, once you actually get a buyer or a listing, most agents get into the trenches of that transaction. They forget about that this one listing or this one buyer should turn you into more business from that one opportunity. So that's what I would want to challenge all of you on. And I think Cameron hit on that point a lot, right? How he generated a listing from a listing, right? And if you do this correctly, that should be how your business grows, right? So now he's got 2 listings, then he's got a 3rd listing, and then it can exponentially start growing, right? The only challenge is that Cameron can't do it all on his own, okay? So, but on the beginning, if you have one buyer you're working with, think outside the box, because if the inventory is tight, like it is in San Diego, well, go and identify their wish list. First of all, do that step right. And we've talked about that on previous trainings, right? Like, you need to know exactly where they want to buy, because what does that allow you to do? Well, then, and that's the neighborhood you can go and door knock. But to me, that's a very easy and a warm kind of conversation, because you're not going there saying, hey, like, do you want to sell your home? Like, instead it's like, hey, I have a buyer. We cannot find anything for them on the MLS and everywhere I'm looking. Like, I'm just doing what I can. I promised my client I'm going to check this neighborhood and see if anyone here, maybe someone that's interested in selling, because they're just such a great family. Like, so it's nothing about them. It's all about your client. And you're just like really working your butt off to help your client. And they love this neighborhood, right? So that's the way I like to think about cold calling or door knocking, right? And it's such a easier and less fearful way of approaching people, right? So it eliminates a lot of the resistance that a lot of people might have or agents have from doing door knocking because of the way that maybe, Tom Ferry teaches and things of that nature, where it requires a lot of grit, where if you approach it from like, hey, I have a need, let me see if I could be a matchmaker, that eliminates a lot of that pressure and stress. And we literally just had an agent on our team, Brian Cameron, right? Every week we talk to him. He identified a buyer, a family member in his condo community. And he just door knocked the condo community and he found a seller. And the seller was like, well, I don't live there. Like, I think he actually either he skip traced their phone numbers and emails and reached out to them. This guy is not living here. It's rented. They ended up talking and he goes, look, I was actually thinking about selling. So let's discuss this. Few months later of conversations, boom, now he's got a listing agreement signed with the seller. And then he's got potential 2 other listings in this same complex from doing that one activity because of having that one buyer that wanted that specific community. And there was nothing on the market. So that's the way I want you to think about, if you have a buyer, how do you maximize, of course, help the client, but at the same time, maximize that opportunity for more business. Same thing on the listing side. And this is why I like working with investors, is when the property is being rehabbed by an investor, like that is such a good opportunity. And I know I mentioned this months ago as well, where, man, leverage that one opportunity of a listing of a flip to go and knock the doors around maybe 20 or 30 that drive by this flip every day as being renovated, and inform them, hey, by the way, I don't know if you know, but this is the company that bought this property. I just want to make everybody here aware that this is going to turn out to be the most beautiful home. We're going to raise values in this neighborhood for you. This is awesome, right? We're excited for you. We're excited for our client. Like, this is amazing. And if you hear any disturbance here, any noise problems, please let me know. I want to make sure that you guys are not being disturbed, right? By the contractors and things of that nature. And if you know anyone that's thinking about selling, you might want to let them know to maybe hold off another few weeks, because this property is going to set the next benchmark for value in this neighborhood. So this would be a great opportunity for whoever's thinking about selling, leveraging our price point for their price point, and everybody in the neighborhood will win, right? Because we all raise the values. And maybe you know someone that wants to move into the neighborhood and you want to have an amazing neighbor, please let me know. But that's all. I'm here just to let you know who owns the property and be of service to you if there's any disturbance to you. Boom. Right now, again, it's not about me trying to tell them, asking them like, hey, are you looking to sell? Because I'm the best agent in the neighborhood and I've sold so many homes. It's like, oh man, I don't know. I wouldn't be able to do that. Like, to me, that's kind of where I'm at right now. And I'm in the same boat. I'm preaching to myself when I'm telling you that we don't maximize our opportunities, because I'm in the same boat. Like, I don't have the time to do that. My team member, Jessica, she doesn't have the time to do that. So guess what I'm doing? I'm identifying a newer agent that we brought on our team. First, I got to see if they have what it takes. I'm watching what they're doing. I'm watching if they're engaging in my meetings. I'm watching if they're, and then guess what? I'm going to say, approach them like, look, I have an opportunity. It's very easy. You want to build a business with us, leveraging my business to build yours. How's that? Right? So that's the way I want you to think, right? So if you're a newer agent and you're like, well, I don't have a listing. Okay, well then go and find a rehab that's being renovated and find out who the owner is, and say like, hey, by the way, I see this property is being rehabbed. I would love to see, is there any way that I can help you market this property? Do you already have an agent? If you do, no problem. But if you don't, I'm willing to go and door knock and see if anybody here knows someone that wants to buy your home. How does that sound, Mr. Investor? Like, if I got that phone call, even as an experienced investor, and I had an agent already lined up for the listing, I would probably bet you that listing agent is not doing the door knocking. So I would be open to be like, well, tell me more. What are you planning on doing? What is your plan? Oh, you're just going to go and knock on 20 doors and just, yeah, sure, go ahead, knock yourself out, right? So it's just about thinking outside the box and looking for opportunities, and not tell yourself like, well, I don't have a listing. Go find one. It doesn't have to be yours. I don't have a buyer. Well, Maybe someone else on your team does. Find out. They're probably not doing the door knocking in the complex. You do it for their own buyer. That's it. That's all I got.
Awesome. That's great. Great stuff. Good, Craig.
One of the things that also is there's great opportunity, and 80% of the agents out there don't do the work. So when you sell a property to a buyer, go knock that neighborhood, because 80% of the agents
They're
aren't
not.
going to do anything.
Right.
I actually asked the other agent, just curiosity, I'm assuming you're doing a mailer to the neighborhood that you sold the home. No. Oh, really? I also use it as a point of attraction into my organization too. Really? And if they say no, they're not, would you mind if I do it? Or I actually say, do you want to see an example of what mine looks like? Or can I see yours also? Do you want to collaborate ideas? So I'm building rapport with other agents also. So don't just do your own listings and a farm. Go where other homes have sold, even if you weren't in the transaction. Because usually if one home sold, another one's going to sell. So
Yeah.
just as a point of what to look for.
That's great. All right. So amazing stuff, Randy. I absolutely love that approach for your average agent who's terrified of doing that. That's such a easy, no stress way. That's brilliant stuff, buddy. I love that. So I'm going to finish off here with a few different things. And one is, don't be, I love this line, by the way, don't be attached to the outcome, right? 90% of people are going to say no. I'll give you an example. When I first started doing the internet lead stuff that everybody knows me for and all that, thanks, Cam, see you, buddy, people would say to me, I can't believe you make people register on your website. I'm like, well, 15% are registering. They're like, what about the other 85%? I'm like, what about them? I cared about the people that said yes, right? Didn't care about the other people. It wasn't relevant. So don't be attached to the outcome. People are going to say no. 90% will probably say no, but 10% will say yes. There's your pool. That's your future buyers and sellers.
Yeah.
I'm a big Tony Robbins fan. And one of the things I learned from Tony Robbins is about breaking the pattern. And so I haven't door knocked neighborhoods. I door knocked FSBOs. I never called a FSBO in my life. I door knocked them. I thought door knocking was much more for my style to do that. I mean, I've done gazillions of cold calling, being an entrepreneur. I've cold called 1 million people in my life. But when I got into real estate, I found door knocking worked in a few different ways. So door knocking FSBOs, breaking the pattern. Hi, I'm Mitch with EXP Realty. Before you say anything, I have no desire to list your property. And they don't grasp that. I said, do you have a seller's disclosure? They never have a seller's disclosure. Opens the door to a conversation. Again, going back to what Randy said, it's about helping, right? And others have said that. Door knocking with a purpose. So for those of you that don't have a budget and you don't have money to do postcard marketing on a regular basis, once a month, go around the neighborhood with flyers that have all your active listings, your pending listings, your sold listings for that neighborhood. And walk around, just, hey, one of the things I like to do for the neighborhood is keep you updated on the local market. Here you go. Simple, right? Because some of those people will want to talk about real estate. Some, not all. And this is one of my favorite ones. This goes back to especially those people that don't have any listings. You don't have to wait to talk to people about a house that went under contract, even if it wasn't yours. Yours? There's a Boston there. And what I mean by that, so say there's a house down the street that went under contract and it was listed at $500,000. You can go through that neighborhood now and say, hey, I'm not sure if you knew the 555 Main Street went under contract for 500 grand, and we have a ton of buyers here looking for houses. I know you may not be interested in selling a house, but do you know someone that might be interested in selling their home? And I always do takeaways like that because I think takeaways, like I know you're not interested, may not be interested in selling a house because they say, well, actually, we've been thinking about it, right? It's very soft. And I'm always like, what's going to create the least amount of friction when I'm trying to do something? But I've never, one of my agents I trained on door knocking, her name's Lisa. She's, she was the agent that everybody said was not going to make it. And she goes, what can I do differently that nobody does? I said, door knock. I guess just agents don't do it, especially in Florida with camps in 95-degree heat. So she started on day one, door knocking. She does $15+ million a year now, every year, and it still goes out there and door knocks every week. Right, it's a very successful thing, and she's someone that everybody told her she was going to fail. I said, no, you got tons of potential because you'll do what other people won't do. So pretty much that's all I got on that. I said I've never cold call. And Brian, you get your hand up there. What do you got?
You said something really important. And I want to give everybody this script. You have to have this in your back pocket. So if you're door knocking a neighborhood, you're only going to hit a percentage of people being home. So when you do get somebody, you've just walked past maybe 2 other houses or 3 other homes and nobody was home. You have to make sure. We used to call this the Columbo backstep close, right? Columbo was a guy who was a TV show. You can Google it, watch it. At the very end of the show, he would always have his cigar in his hand and he'd go, oh, by the way, right? So this was called the Columbo backstep close back in the day. Whenever you're talking to somebody and you pass by a few homes and nobody was home, have this question ready to go. Say, oh, by the way, if you were me, which one of these neighbors would you go talk to? Because some of them aren't home. And I'm just curious, knowing what you know about this neighborhood, which would you go talk to if you were a realtor? And you'll be surprised. People will say, you know what? Mr. Johnson's working 2 jobs. He's by himself, this, that, the other thing. I would go talk to him. Thank you. You're going to get the best answer that way.
Yeah. All right, guys, we hit our 1 o'clock time, so we got to get out the call here. Thanks everybody. Phenomenal stuff as always. And
Good job,
we're always
Renee.
here if anybody needs anything.
I love
Okay.
Renee's post, what she did. Look at all the connections she made from her door knocking. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it works, man.
And by the way, everything works if you're consistent, right?
That's right. Yep.
Yes. All right, guys. Have a great week, guys. We'll see you guys next week.
Later.